happy because I'm in my fit Pete Puma. And now I'm with my girl. I got my mango lemonade and my water lemonade and my sweet tea from Voodoo Wings. All in a mason jar.
Yeah, I'm innocent. No concrete evidence.
This is Anaya Blanchard, a 19-year-old college student casually walking in a convenience store to buy chips, but who would never make it back home. Because inside that same store, someone was watching her, someone with a brutal plan. Just moments later, she would be found dead after running into a strange man just minutes from her house, a man with a violent past, already accused of brutal assaults, yet somehow still free on bond. What happened that night wasn't random. It was the collision of innocence and danger, of a young woman's ordinary routine and a predator hiding in plain sight. And the most disturbing part of this story isn't just how Anaya's life was stolen, but how many chances the system had to stop her killer before he ever crossed her path.
We're going to get justice. Might not be this year, but maybe next year, but we are going to get justice for Anaya. And until we do, we're not going to give up fighting. We're still going to fight. We're still going to remember her every time we get a chance, and even after that.
I was just led here tonight just because I just need to be more vocal. And with her not having justice yet, I want to get the word out for us to try to figure out some resolution to find out what happened to my daughter.
Born on June 22, 2000 in Northport, Alabama, Anaya grew up in nearby Homewood, a community she loved and one that shaped her into the person she would become. Anaya came from a close-knit family. Her mother, Angela Haley Harris, was a registered nurse who dedicated her life not only to caring for others, but specifically to helping abused children as a sexual assault nurse examiner. However, that instinct to care for people wasn't something Anaya had to learn. It had been instilled in her blood. Her father, Elijah Blanchard, was a businessman in Birmingham. Although he and Angela were no longer together, he remained an active, loving presence in Anaya's life. Angela later married Walt Harris, a UFC heavyweight fighter, who became Anaya's stepfather. Between both sides of her family, Anaya was surrounded by people who loved her deeply. Alongside her siblings, she grew up in a home where responsibility, resilience, and the value of family were part of everyday life, which was a surprise when she would disappear without as much as a word to the people she loved.
No, it's nasty. You move my lips. This leg was all the way in my neck. He's all over me. I'm going to smell like dog in the gym for the second day in a row, not the row. He's so annoying.
During her time at Homewood High School, she excelled both on and off the field. She was captain of her softball team, wearing the number 22, leading with skill and kindness even toward her opponents. That blend of competitiveness and compassion defined her. It was the reason she was awarded the Patriot Award, honoring students who show exceptional character both on and off the field. But Anaya's sense of responsibility extended beyond school and sports. At home, she naturally stepped into caregiving roles, helping her younger siblings with homework, making sure they were fed and getting them ready for bed. In one interview, Anaya's mother would say that Anaya always had that mama instinct, a nurturing drive that would shape her path in life. So why would someone with such devotion suddenly vanish without a trace? After graduating from Homewood, Anaya enrolled at Southern Union State Community College, majoring in early childhood education. She wanted a career that allowed her to shape future generations, not just teach children, but nurture them. Her long-term goal was to transfer to Auburn University and continue building toward that future. Even before college, Anaya was already balancing work and school. She had her first job at 16, working at Urban Cookhouse, and she managed the responsibilities of school, work, and family with remarkable discipline. And by 2019, Anaya was settling into a new chapter of life. She had college independence, planning for her future, and thriving in the community around her. Nothing about her life suggested anything was about to go wrong. Just like in many cases I have covered, there is no warning, no moment that explains it all. And yet, October 23, 2019 would become a day that began ordinary but would end in a tragedy no one could have foreseen. Earlier that Wednesday, Anaya had attended a funeral with her brother, Elijah. After the service, the siblings spent time visiting family in Birmingham before heading back to Auburn together that night. The ride home was ordinary, familiar, a quiet sibling ritual. At around 11 p.m., Anaya dropped Elijah off at his home just 10 minutes from her own apartment. A simple moment, a quick goodbye, before she headed back to her own apartment, ready to rest before her babysitting plans the next morning. But nothing about that moment suggested it would be the last time Elijah would see his sister alive. Back at her own apartment, Sarah was already getting agitated. She had been trying to get through to Anaya, but no response. But here's where it gets weirder. At around 11:09 p.m., Sarah had texted Anaya if she's almost at the apartment, and Anaya had responded saying yes. It was nothing suspicious, just the kind of exchange that both friends do every time. But as minutes passed, Sarah didn't see Anaya. Keep in mind, the drive from Elijah's apartment to Anaya's was just 10 minutes, so where was Anaya, and why wasn't she responding to her phone? 30 minutes went by, still nothing. At this point, Sarah decided to reach out again. This time, she texted asking Anaya if she had gone somewhere else. But Anaya's response would send a light bulb off because it was unusual. Anaya responded by saying she was out with a man named Eric, someone she had just met. But this was completely out of character for Anaya. She wouldn't just go out with someone she had just met. So Sarah checked a nearby location that the two of them often shared. It appeared Anaya was at a nearby apartment complex, familiar enough for a college student, and at that point it didn't feel like something was immediately wrong. Maybe truly Anaya was just hanging out with a fellow college student. Still, Sarah couldn't shake the unease. She knew Anaya's habits well. Her friend was cautious, rarely spontaneous, and always kept her circle small. The mention of Eric didn't fit with the Anaya she knew. By the next morning, on October 24th, Anaya still hadn't returned to her apartment. Sarah tried calling, but this time her call went straight to voicemail. As for the location tracker, it no longer worked. Something was definitely wrong. Sarah reached out to Elijah to see if he could reach out to her sister, but he had no news either. His calls went straight to voicemail. The reality began to settle. Anaya was missing. Elijah contacted the woman she babysat for. Anaya had been scheduled to be there that morning, but she hadn't shown up either. The gravity of the situation became real. Anaya's parents, Angela and Walt, drove straight to Auburn. From the moment they arrived, they began searching neighborhoods, streets, hidden corners, anywhere that might hold a clue. They knew something didn't fit. Anaya's dog, Blue, was left alone overnight, something she would never have done. Not only that, Anaya had responsibilities, a babysitting job, commitments she would never abandon. Without hesitation, Anaya was reported to the Auburn Police Department. Her family turned to local news and social media, asking the community for help. People responded, search parties formed, and the message spread throughout the community that Anaya was missing. Investigators began piecing together her last known movements.
Walt Harris, Angela Harris here. If you have any leads on where our daughter is, Anaya Blanchard, please go to the authorities. Tell someone she was last seen in a black Honda CRV 2017. Tag is 49 B2356. BS 356. I'm sorry. She was possibly last seen downtown Auburn. At Southeastern, downtown Auburn, Southeastern, and Sky Bar. If you have any information, please come forward.
Police focused on her phone's last location, canvassed nearby businesses, and sought surveillance footage. It wasn't long before they found a lead. Investigators found that Anaya's debit card had been used late that night, giving them a location and a timestamp. Before long, investigators made another discovery. By Friday, October 25th, Auburn Police Chief announced that Anaya's vehicle, a black Honda CR-V, had been seen at 12:30 a.m. near South College Street and Interstate 85 in Auburn. For the first time, investigators had a confirmed sighting of her car after dropping off her brother, narrowing the timeline to a few critical hours. This was a surprise because the location the car was found was miles away from Auburn, far enough that it immediately raised questions about how the car got there, who had driven it, or if Anaya had gone there herself. But something else raised alarm to detectives. When investigators searched the vehicle, it had visible damage to the front passenger side. It was obvious something serious had happened between the night Anaya was last seen and the discovery of her car. With Anaya's vehicle discovered in Montgomery and the first signs of foul play established, investigators were racing against time. Every hour that passed without answers weighed heavily on her family, who were now clinging to the hope that the trail would lead them to her. But this was only the beginning of the grim discoveries detectives were about to make. Inside the vehicle, investigators found a disturbing scene. There was blood in the passenger area and a bullet hole in the car that made it clear that something brutal had taken place. This was no longer a case of a young woman missing. Something deadly had occurred. At this point, the news of Anaya's disappearance had spread rapidly. Search efforts intensified. The community organized vigils, shared flyers, and scoured neighborhoods. In cases of disappearance, time matters. Investigators expanded their search beyond Auburn, and state agencies joined the effort. A reward was offered for information, and attention grew. But still, Anaya was nowhere to be found. That was until a new video would surface. On October 28, 2019, 5 days after Anaya went missing, detectives released a key piece of evidence. At around 11:21 p.m., surveillance footage from a convenience store near her apartment captured her buying a bag of potato chips. However, detectives noticed something else in the footage. Nothing seemed wrong. There were no signs of distress from Anaya. It seemed she was just going about her day. But this was also the last confirmed moment she was seen alive. Investigators began analyzing the footage closely, searching for anyone who had been near her. But days passed and the case only grew. Officials at the state level, including Alabama Governor Ivy Caney, urged the public to come forward with any information, even offering a $1,000 reward to anyone who could provide crucial information to what may have happened to Anaya or who was responsible. As officials pressed for answers, the search grew urgent. When Anaya's stepfather stepped in, UFC heavyweight fighter Walt Harris, Anaya's stepfather, decided to use his influence in the sports world to amplify the search for his missing daughter. With a large following, he reached out directly to the public, pleading for assistance, tips, or any clue that might lead investigators closer to Anaya. His call didn't go unanswered. More voices joined in, and the effort began to grow. Among those stepping forward was UFC President Dana White, who added momentum by pledging an extra $25,000 reward for information tied to Anaya's disappearance. The case was gaining traction, drawing more resources and attention than before. Yet, despite the surge of support and the spotlight on the investigation, Anaya remained missing. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. At this point, the authorities knew that Anaya had been harmed, but whether she was still alive was still a question. So, eventually, they released an official statement. Police explained that materials recovered from her vehicle had been analyzed by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, and the results pointed clearly to foul play.
Surveillance video from a convenience store in Auburn shows a teenager just before she disappeared. 19-year-old Anaya Blanchard was last seen inside that gas station on South College Street last Wednesday. Her SUV was found 2 days later at an apartment complex in Montgomery. That SUV had some damage to it. Now, police are asking for anyone who may have seen that car in an accident to call authorities.
When we located the vehicle, at that point, we knew and confirmed that we need to be concerned for her welfare. We were already looking for her, but at that point, I think all of us knew, okay, this is a situation where, obviously, this is a critical situation where her welfare is at stake here.
And police now say foul play is a possibility. Investigators are urging anyone with information to call Auburn Police.
Police found her car 2 days later, damaged and parked in an apartment complex in Montgomery.
There's about 50 miles between Auburn and Montgomery, and so we're looking at that area specifically as the critical area where something took place.
Police say evidence inside her car points to foul play.
I love her so much, and I want her back so bad. And so I'm going to hold out hope.
Aniya's father says watching the surveillance video, something about his daughter seemed off.
It was almost like somebody told her to do something.
What was so unusual about her body language?
She was she looked kind of distant.
Alabama officials are offering more than $100,000 reward for any information in Aniya's case, thanks in large part to an outpouring of donations from the UFC community. Whoa! UFC star Walt Harris is Aniya's stepfather.
It's overwhelming to see them come up and, the governor, Kay Ivey, thank you for approving the reward.
Tonight, blue ribbons dot mailboxes around Aniya's hometown in Alabama as nearly a dozen agencies, from local police to the FBI, work to bring her home.
That's our main goal. We have to find Aniya. We want her back. We want her back.
Blaine, what are you hearing from police tonight?
Well, Jose, the chief tells me that police here in Auburn are investigating a number of possibilities, including that Aniya possibly met up with somebody that she met online.
By this stage, the investigation had expanded dramatically. Local, state, and federal agencies were working together as part of a coordinated task force. The search pressed on, with officials continuing to appeal to the public for any information about Aniya's movements on the night she vanished and in the days that followed. But for Aniya's family, each new update only continued to carry enormous weight. The growing attention brought more eyes to the case, but not the answers they desperately needed. They were caught in a painful limbo. Whilst they were certain that something terrible had happened to their baby girl, they were still without the clarity of knowing exactly what had transpired.
If I would have known that you wouldn't be here anymore, I would have made the moments last a little longer. 'Cause now I'm alone, and you're just a memory in my mind. I would have given anything to say goodbye. If I would have known. If I would have known. Oh, I remember we would laugh all the time. Really? But now you're not around, and I'm just trying to find something else to fill the empty spaces you left behind. Nothing ever seems to work. I've been thinking about the things that you used to say.
But just when it seemed like the case had gone cold, a breakthrough arrived. By November 6th, police released an image from the surveillance footage of the store Aniya was last seen to the public. It showed a man who had been in the store with Aniya that same night. It was the first real face connected to her disappearance. At first, authorities described him as a person of interest, someone who might have seen what happened, or someone who knew exactly what was happening that night. But little did detectives know they would find more chilling information. A witness would come forward reporting something that would stop investigators in their tracks. The witness, who was outside the convenience store that night, reported seeing Aniya being forced into her own car by a man matching the description of the person from the released footage before driving off. That moment transformed the case from a disappearance to a violent crime. Authorities now had not only a suspect's image, but an eyewitness account linking him directly to Aniya's last moments. Investigators immediately dug into Ibrahim's background. At the time of Anaya Blanchett's disappearance, Ibrahim Yazid was not a free man without history. He was out on bond. Earlier that year, he had been arrested in Montgomery and charged with kidnapping, robbery, and attempted murder, according to court records. Prosecutors alleged that he robbed a man, assaulted him, and held him against his will. That wasn't the only accusation. In the same case, Ibrahim was also accused of beating another victim so severely that the man was left unconscious and near death. Yet, despite the seriousness of those charges, Ibrahim was released on a $60,000 bond. As investigators dug deeper, his past began to take shape. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the years, this man had faced multiple serious allegations, violent assaults, and even an attempted attack on police officers. Yet, in several of those cases, grand juries declined to indict and prosecutions never moved forward. How could someone with such a violent history be free and roaming the streets, seeking his next target? The alarming pattern was apparent, but the authorities now had to focus on the immediate task, finding Anaya and bringing him to justice.
On November 8th, just 2 days after being identified as the suspect, Ibrahim was located in Escambia County, Florida. A short police chase ensued near Interstate 10 and Pine Forest Road. Law enforcement officers, including a canine unit, helped apprehend him. He had fled, but not far enough. Finally, the man connected to Anaya's disappearance was in custody.
Well, it is day 15 in the search for missing 19-year-old Anaya Blanchard. It's the first search day since the arrest of a prime suspect in her disappearance from the Auburn area.
Right now, law enforcement from 11 different agencies are now actively searching for Blanchard on the ground using search dogs and from the air. They're hoping to bring her home, and right now, they're focusing their search efforts between Montgomery and Auburn. Now, breaking news on the 4 as the man accused of kidnapping Anaya Blanchard is on his way back to Alabama.
Police in Florida arrested Ibrahim Yazid last night. He is accused of kidnapping Anaya.
Even with Ibrahim arrested, questions remained. Where was Anaya? What had happened to her between leaving her brother's house and her car being abandoned? The search continued, expanding across Auburn, Montgomery, and surrounding areas. Investigators interviewed neighbors, scoured wooded areas, and examined every location connected to Ibrahim's movements. Legal proceedings began quickly, though many details remained under wraps. A gag order was issued by the district judge, preventing prosecutors, defense attorneys, and witnesses from speaking publicly about the case. Access to the courtroom was restricted, and much of what was happening in the investigation remained confidential. Despite the legal silence, public interest remained high. Anaya's mother, Angela, and her stepfather, Walt Harris, used media appearances and social media to keep attention on the case. Search parties, social media campaigns, and community vigils continued, keeping her name and story in the public eye. Not only that, they even appeared on Dr. Phil, a popular American talk show, to speak publicly about their daughter Anaya's disappearance. For them, it was another way to keep her name in the spotlight and to push for answers. During the interview, they voiced their belief that Anaya's abduction had not been random, but instead carefully planned.
There's a lot of things that don't make sense to us, as it would be just a random thing. It seems like it was actually set up and it was something that was planned.
Let's talk about that, because how do you think it might have been set up if it was a setup? Because no one could have known that she was going to stop in there to grab a snack at that time of night. So tell me how the setup would have worked here.
Personally, I feel like it was somebody that, if it was a setup, that's somebody that knew Anaya and that knew her well.
That gave him the opportunity to get that close to her.
And it's someone that would be running with those type of people.
Your theory is not that someone that knew her, a friend or someone, set her up.
I have those thoughts. I I still do. I have feelings that there may be somebody that she knows that has set her up. I have things that something that we can't really discuss, but there's something that we know that they are helping a lead that they're working on to try to help figure that part out.
That there might be somebody from her world, not his world, that might have bridged these two worlds together.
Exactly.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Exactly.
All right, and has he been appointed a public defender?
Yes.
And the reason I ask, Walt and Angela, is I have a certain expertise in deception detection and getting to the truth. I've spent a lot of time in the litigation arena, and I would give anything to have the opportunity to sit down and talk to this person and find out where Anaya is if he knows. This may be the best thing he could possibly do right now, is to give up what he knows before it's too late. If she's being held captive right now and she's listening to you, Walt, what do you say to her?
I love you, baby girl. We're looking for you. We're doing everything that we can, and we're gonna get you. I promise. I won't stop until we do. We love you.
Angela?
Just that, Anaya, you know Mommy loves you. You're my heart. And I want you to be the strong girl that you are. Just hold on. Be strong. Be tough. Be smart. And then because we are working hard to get to you. And it's going to be soon. I promise. Mommy loves you.
And Anaya, let me add, your parents here are dedicated and devoted, and you are their #1 priority. And I am partnering with them. And we're going to do everything we can to find you. And there's nothing that I won't do to help them. And they're not going to stop until they find you. So please know, nobody's moving on. Everything is about you at this point. And we're going to continue until we find the answers here, until we find you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
All right.
Okay.
God bless both of you, and you're in our prayers. If you know anything at all about the whereabouts of Anaya Haley Blanchard, please come forward. However insignificant you might think the tip is, you never know. Call Crime Stoppers, the number on the screen right now.
Meanwhile, on November 12th, the search effort led by Texas EquiSearch had been temporarily suspended after covering wide areas in Auburn and surrounding communities. Despite the extensive work, there were still no concrete leads on Anaya's whereabouts. However, that pause didn't last long. By November 18th, EquiSearch resumed operations, revisiting previously searched locations and expanding into new territory. Just 2 days later, on November 20th, the case advanced in court. At Ibrahim Yazid's preliminary hearing, the judge ruled that there was sufficient probable cause for the case to proceed to a grand jury. His bond remained revoked, and he was ordered to provide a DNA sample.
Now, within just the last hour, Jonathan Hardison has found this new information from court documents about Yazid. Jonathan, tell us what you've learned.
Janet, a couple of new pieces of information. First, just breaking in the last 10 minutes, we've confirmed Yazid was in court this afternoon. Let's show you the brand new video. Our source here is the NBC Pool. This is Yazid in court within the last half hour or so, where we are told he waived his extradition, which means he could be transported back to Alabama within the next few hours. We also got a hold of the probable cause affidavit filed by Auburn police. It says investigators found blood matching Anaya Blanchard in the passenger compartment of her SUV. And the report says that blood evidence is, quote, indicative of someone suffering a life-threatening injury. Now, here's another new piece of information. We're also learning a witness told investigators he saw a man later identified as Ibrahim Yazid forcing Anaya into a vehicle against her will and then leaving with her inside. This comes just hours after U.S. Marshals arrested Yazid this morning a few miles across the state line into Florida near Pensacola. Again, he was just in court. That video into our newsroom in the last 10 minutes. Waiving extradition, the detectives from Auburn Police had been in Pensacola all day. They are ready to take him back if he waived his extradition. He has. So I just spoke to the state attorney's office, who says that process could happen sometime tonight. Again, there is paperwork to be done here, but the bottom line, Yazid could be on his way back to face the charges here in Alabama within the next several hours. We'll stay on top of these breaking developments on our WBRC News app and throughout the next 2.5 hours of news, guys.
Thank you, John.
Testimony during the hearing added crucial details. Detective Josh Mixon explained that surveillance footage from a Chevron gas station showed Ibrahim inside the store at the same time as Anaya, purchasing alcohol and glancing in her direction. He also referenced a witness who claimed to have seen Ibrahim forcing Anaya into her car. Not only that, Detective Josh Mixon explained that one witness had confided in a female companion about what he saw, Ibrahim forcing Anaya into her car. Instead of urging him to act, she told him to stay out of it. By then, investigators were piecing together more of the puzzle. Surveillance footage, witness accounts, and forensic evidence were beginning to align. Yet for Anaya's family, none of it eased the anguish. The progress in the case didn't change the most painful reality. Anaya was still missing, or even possibly dead. But what investigators discovered next would change everything. On November 25th, a grim discovery brought clarity and heartbreak. Acting on leads developed from the investigation, Auburn Police and the task force located human remains in a wooded area in Macon County, near County Road 2, not far from New Hope Baptist Church. The remains were later confirmed to be 18-year-old Anaya Blanchard. For her family, the uncertainty was over. The search that had begun with prayers, hope, and questions ended in tragedy. With Anaya's body recovered, the case against Ibrahim Yazid escalated. The charges were upgraded to include capital murder. Investigators and prosecutors now faced the daunting task of preparing a case that could withstand the complexities of his violent history, the circumstances of the crime, and the scrutiny of a courtroom trial. After several years of waiting, the trial for Ibrahim Yazid finally began in March 2026 in Macon County, Alabama. By this point, the case had been building for over 6 years, an intricate, emotionally charged investigation that had tested the patience and resolve of Anaya's family, investigators, and the community.
It was one of the most high-profile criminal cases in Alabama in years, and now, nearly 7 years later, it is finally going to trial. Welcome to WSFA 12 News at 10 tonight. I'm Mark Bullock. Ibrahim Yazid's trial is set to begin March 2nd. He's accused of kidnapping Anaya Blanchard in Auburn, and the fact he was out on bond at the time prompted the state legislature to pass what is now known as Anaya's Law. Yazid went before a judge today. Our Emma Ellis has the latest.
Ibrahim Yazid appeared in the Macon County Courthouse for his final pretrial hearing 3 weeks before his trial begins. Yazid is charged with capital kidnapping and robbery in the 2019 of Anaya Blanchard, a 19-year-old college student from Homewood. Prosecutors say Blanchard was murdered after an encounter with Yazid at a gas station in Auburn. Yazid has maintained for 7 years that he didn't commit the crime.
Yeah, I'm innocent. No concrete evidence.
All pending motions were ruled on with no new filings made at the Friday hearing. At the time of Yazid had been released on bond for alleged kidnapping and attempted murder in an unrelated case. Since Yazid was out on bond at the time, this case is the inspiration behind Anaya's Law, passed in 2022. It's an amendment to the Alabama Constitution that allows judges to deny bail to people who are charged with violent Class A felonies, including kidnapping or rape. Before the passing of this law, citizens accused of criminal offenses other than capital murder were entitled to pretrial bail bond. This case was also the first application of the Speedy Trial Act signed in 2025. This bill allows retired circuit judges to preside over specific cases to reduce violent crime and allow cases to be tried more quickly. Retired Circuit Judge Tom Young Jr. was appointed to preside over Yazid's case. Young served in the bench in this circuit for nearly 2 decades. The state is seeking the penalty.
Now jury selection begins. The court summoned 450 people to serve as potential jurors for the trial. Jury selection starts Monday at the Tuskegee Municipal Complex. And March 1st, they'll narrow down the pool to 40 jurors through initial rounds. Then those 40 will strike the jury.
Emma, thank you for that. The selection process is expected to take several days, and we'll have coverage of the trial here on WSFA 12 News.
Over 6 long days, the courtroom became a stage for the painstaking reconstruction of Anaya's last hours. Prosecutors called more than 40 witnesses, each one providing a piece of the story. Surveillance footage showed Ibrahim in the convenience store and later at the gas station, placing him in the same location as Anaya. Witness testimony recounted seeing her being forced into her own car. Forensic experts described the blood, the bullet, and the other evidence found in her vehicle, showing that the events of October 23rd had not been accidental. The prosecution painted a picture of premeditation and deliberate violence. They emphasized that Ibrahim had a history of violent crimes and had been out on bond at the time, giving him the opportunity to commit the crime. The jury was reminded that this was not just a missing person case, this was a young woman's life stolen in cold blood, and the perpetrator had left behind enough evidence to identify him if investigators followed it carefully. The defense took a different approach, largely through cross-examination and challenging the strength of the evidence. They questioned the reliability of eyewitness accounts and emphasized that surveillance footage captured moments that were open to interpretation. They attempted to sow doubt about whether Ibrahim could be definitively linked to every aspect of the crime, but they did not call any witnesses to testify on his behalf, leaving the prosecution's narrative largely uncontested. For Anaya's family, each day of the trial was a mixture of pain and relief. They listened as the timeline of her final hours was laid bare, from the convenience store to the abandonment of her car. Every piece of information brought them closer to understanding the truth of what had happened, but it also reinforced the magnitude of their loss. One of the most chilling parts of the trial was hearing about the evidence found inside Anaya's car. The bloodstains, the damage, and the bullet hole all told the story of a struggle that no one should ever endure. It was a stark reminder that the life of a vibrant, responsible, and loved young woman had been cut short. After days of testimony, closing arguments were presented, and the case was then handed over to the jury. For Anaya's family, the wait was agonizing. Each hour of deliberation was filled with anxiety and the painful reality of what had been lost. Finally, after careful consideration, the jury reached a verdict. Ibrahim Yazid was found guilty of murder and felony murder in connection with the death of 18-year-old Anaya Blanchard. He was not convicted of capital murder, a distinction that carried weight. It meant the death penalty was no longer an option. For Anaya's family, the verdict delivered accountability, even if it could never restore what had been taken from them or answer every lingering question. Ibrahim's conviction comes with a sentence ranging from 10 years to life in prison. His formal sentencing is scheduled for May 27, 2026, and he is expected to appeal.
After weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberations, the jury found Ibrahim Yazid guilty of felony and both lesser-included offenses of the original capital charges tied to kidnapping and robbery.
2 days to appeal the conviction.
The verdict comes after jurors heard 6 days of testimony in a case that dates back to October 2019, when 19-year-old Anaya Blanchard disappeared after being last seen at a gas station in Auburn. Her vehicle was later found with evidence of a struggle, and her body was eventually discovered in a wooded area. Prosecutors argued Yazid kidnapped, robbed, and Blanchard, pushing for capital convictions that could have led to the penalty. But jurors instead returned guilty verdicts on lesser charges, felony on the kidnapping count and on the robbery count, meaning this is no longer a penalty case.
We are happy that we will not have a penalty phase and have to deal with the penalty in this case. Based on the evidence in this case, those of you that sat through the trial, you know that this wasn't a penalty case.
Following the verdict, defense attorney William Watley also pushed back on how the case has been portrayed over the past several years.
But the false information, the misstatements, rising to almost a level of a lynch mob to get Mr. Yazid on this capital charges. He was irresponsible.
He also says Yazid plans to appeal.
He's concerned. I think you heard him speak up. Some of you in the courtroom may have heard him say that he wanted to appeal, and we'll do that at the appropriate time.
Meanwhile, Anaya Blanchard's family left the courthouse visibly emotional and declined to comment at the time. In a statement, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said in part, "We are disappointed this outcome does not allow for the penalty. We intend to seek the maximum sentence allowed by law. I believe that is what justice demands in this case."
Yazid is set to be sentenced on May 7th. In Macon County, Gracie Johnson reporting.
Beyond the courtroom, Anaya's case left a lasting mark on Alabama law. In the years following her death, legislators passed what is now known as Anaya's Law, granting judges greater authority to deny bail to defendants charged with violent crimes. The law was designed to prevent situations like this one, because when Anaya was killed, Ibrahim had been out on bond despite facing multiple serious charges. Under Anaya's Law, those charges could have kept him behind bars. The law was designed to prevent similar tragedies, ensuring that those with a history of violent crimes could be held accountable and kept from reoffending while awaiting trial. And while the courtroom prepares for its final word, the larger questions remain. How did a man with such a violent history walk free long enough to take Anaya's life? Why did it take her death to spark change? And even now, with Anaya's Law in place, can we be certain the system will protect the next victim before tragedy strikes? For Anaya's family, the law was a bittersweet legacy. It was a tangible change born from Anaya's death, a way to prevent future loss, but it could never undo the pain they had endured. Anaya's life, full of promise and responsibility, had been stolen, and the grief remained. Even after the trial, her story continued to resonate. Friends, classmates, and the community remembered her, not only for the tragedy, but for who she had been: a responsible daughter, a caring sister, a compassionate babysitter, and a college student working towards a bright future. Her life exemplified dedication, kindness, and ambition. She had balanced family responsibilities, school, and work, and had plans to continue her education and contribute to her community. May Anaya Blanchard rest in peace, and her family and friends find peace in the knowledge that the story of this young woman, whose life, though tragically cut short, continues to make a difference through the lessons her story leaves behind. What do you think about this case? Drop your thoughts in the comments and click on one of the cards to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.